Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have some thought-provoking and terrifying encounters to share with you. Before we get into these encounters, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that they just don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may or may not like what you hear. Last but not least, Dogman, Frightening Encounters Volume 1 and 2, the audiobook, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Now, I've taken enough of your time, everyone. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter. I really wish I had seen a Bigfoot or an alien. At least those are more well known. I told my parents and my close friend about this so far because I had to talk to somebody. But it sounds completely crazy even to myself as I tell it. I work in a professional field, and I feel like I can't tell anyone around me without sounding like I'm going off the deep end. But I need to talk to somebody, and I'm also concerned that this thing is still around the Denver area as we speak. I was at a friend's house in the suburb of Denver on Saturday, March 14th, 2015. The house is surrounded by typical Denver suburb, but it butts up next to an area of open space. She lives on a very large lot, an acre and a half possibly, with an 8-foot stone-type fence along the back of the property and a shorter 5-foot iron fence that divides the front yard from the back. She had explained that she has a coyote problem there, so she's very careful letting her dog out at night. He's a very old pug, a bit deaf and can't see well either. I can hear the coyotes when I'm there, and there are rabbits everywhere. We regularly find evidence of rabbit kills all around the yard. So when she takes her dog out at night, she takes a very large flashlight, twice the size of a large mag light, and shines it around the yard first, and then lets him out, but stays right next to him the whole time with the flashlight on. She also insisted I do the same. I grew up in the desert, and I've seen plenty of coyote, and they're pretty small and typically cowards. I thought she was being a bit over-paranoid about it, but it may have saved my life that night. I went out, explored the yard, and shined the flashlight around the yard, all over the area we would be. We don't take them all that far from the back door to use the bathroom since her dog is fairly disabled these days. I saw nothing and let the dogs out with me. I kept very close to them because I promised I would. A small but important detail here, and one I feel may have saved me. Part of the iron fence between the front and backyard butts up to the driveway. I was standing around 20 yards from the back door and about 10 yards from the iron fence. I had my back to the iron fence and the dogs close. This is where I feel like I sound weird, but here goes. I heard what to me sounded like hoofbeats running extremely fast, up from behind me. In my head, I had just enough time to think, why am I hearing hooves? I knew a horse made no sense, but I know the sound of hooves. I knew an animal was coming straight at me. I turned expecting a coyote, even though the sound made no sense. As I turned around to the fence, something I can hardly describe had just launched off the ground from the driveway. It was moving extremely fast and cleared the fence easily. It was more like it had jumped from further back in the driveway, so its trajectory would land it closer to us at that speed. As I said, we were only 10 yards from the fence, but this thing was moving so fast. I would guess I had about a second tops to register the sound I heard thanks to the concrete on the driveway and realize something was happening. Since I expected a coyote as I turned around, all I could think of was to stick my arms out and make myself look bigger, as well as kind of shield the dogs near me. I screamed no as loud as I could and caught this thing in a flashlight beam as I turned around. It was coming straight at me, and I had a split second to step aside slightly as it landed just a few feet from me. It was still going full speed when it hit the ground, like a fast predator speed. It touched down quickly on all fours, but immediately rose back up onto two legs and continued running at full speed toward the back fence. My dog gave a very short chase, just a few steps really, but could never keep up at that speed. This thing continued running straight at the back of the stone fence very fast. The back fence is around 30 yards from where I was standing when this took place at 8 feet tall. I heard its steps moving away and followed it with the flashlight. I did not actually see it jump the back fence, but I lost it in the confusion, heading that direction almost too quickly to have stopped. Also, I didn't hear any steps through the wide gravel border surrounding the fence. I can only assume it cleared the back fence as easily as it cleared the front, even though it was much higher. I'll start by saying that I've been into the outdoors all of my life. I grew up in a smallish desert town, and my family has 2 cabins in the mountains. Most of my free time revolves around the outdoors, and I've seen all types of wildlife: bear, cougar, wolves, coyote, etc. I mention those because they are predators. This was a predator also, but nothing like these animals. This was so unlike anything I had ever seen. It's actually very hard to describe, but I'll do my best. I was expecting a coyote as I turned around. The combination of expecting a coyote but seeing something so completely alien, and the fact that it was moving so fast and coming straight at me, made it very hard to take in as it flew towards me. It was very large and pitch black. It was not long-haired, but I would say a thin layer of hair over its black skin, or possibly a full layer of short black hair. I thought I heard hoofbeats, but I never did get a close look at the feet. I would assume it was actually claws on the concrete. As it was coming over the fence, it also seemed bigger than when it landed. I wouldn't say it had wings, but it felt like an extra skin. It hit the ground right beside us and exactly between where I had just been. That's where I got the good light on it. It was still moving fast. It touched down and immediately stood back up while running. Its head was lower than mine, but still quite tall, over 5 feet. It was not standing totally erect like a person, so it was probably even taller. And it was also still running. I barely looked down at its face. I'm 5'10". It hit the ground with enough weight that I felt its weight vibrate through my feet as well as the first couple of heavy steps it took past me. The extra skin, possibly wings, made it very hard to judge the weight, but the body was large. It was almost coal black, to the point that the main body almost seemed to absorb my flashlight beam as it ran off, like a matte black. As it stood up, the legs seemed to be backwards jointed like a dog. Some of the only color I saw on it was a bit of brown running down its legs. Picture Doberman color. It was very, very close. I'm still surprised we didn't touch. The legs seemed very strong. I could see muscle definition, almost like a man's legs. The main body was thick, but because of the skin thing, which I'm still having a hard time describing, a close comparison would be like a cape almost. There was very little definition around the front. I saw the arms sticking out, but there was nowhere close to the definition of the legs. The arms were much smaller, and again, I didn't get a good look at the hands. The back was broad, but anatomy was very hard to process with the skin. The head looked like a combination of things, much like a wolf but thicker and less elongated, like a bear skull. Canine teeth were visible. It was already passing me as it continued running, and was over at me. Teeth were definitely bared. It did seem to have a lighter gray-colored streak along its jaw, really the only other color I saw on its body. The eyes looked yellow in my flashlight. I don't know if they were reflecting off of it, or it was the true color since we were so close. I feel like they were reflecting, but I can't be positive. I had a dog within a few feet on either side of me. It landed and ran between myself and one of the dogs, but did not try to snatch it, nor did it reach out to grab me. The dog would have been easy pickings at that speed. I have the distinct impression that it was coming for me, and I just happened to move out of the way, and it was already passing too fast to grab. This thing made no sound at all except for the hoof-type sound of its feet on the concrete and the steps through the yard. On the grass, it was almost silent except for the first few steps closest to me. I called my parents in the morning, and the best way I could describe it with normal animals was wolf, bear, bat, possibly a monkey, but mostly monkey because of its two legs. I still can't. I don't believe in demons, and I don't think it was one, but a couple of days ago, I didn't believe I might have an encounter with an unknown creature like this either. It scared me so bad that I can't even open the door at night without getting full-body goosebumps. And even looking out the windows in the dark makes me uncomfortable. It's strange to say and irrational, but I am currently scared of the dark. My body is physically reacting uncontrollably. I would appreciate some sort of response. Today's second encounter. I was traveling inside of Harrison Bay State Park in Tennessee one evening in 2010. As I reached the top of the hill, I had to slam on my brakes because a huge black hairy creature came bounding across the road. It was so large that it was a few feet longer than my lane wide. I know that if it were to stand up straight, it would have been well over 8 feet tall. The head was large, also with a short snout. The tail was somewhat short, about 2 feet long. I know another car saw it as well because when I hit my brakes, another car turned onto the road and slammed on their brakes as well. We both sat there for a few minutes. I truly have no idea what it was that I saw. It was not a dog or a horse. Dogs don't get that big. The legs were muscular and long. It was on all fours, but it ran like it'd have the ability to stand up bipedally. I watched it run into the woods, and it was running faster than any animal I've ever seen. I took my foot off the brake and slowly drove ahead. About a half a mile down the road, I noticed it again on the edge of the woods with its teeth bared and shaved. I was now afraid of this thing stalking me. I accelerated home. I have never seen it again, but I know this creature is still around. I'm very cautious when I drive through that area. Today's third encounter. I hunt toads for my snakes down where the Hoback River meets the Snake River. They call it the old boat ramp. Now, I've grown up hearing people tell me weird things or how they saw something in the woods, but it ended up being a stump. I never believed in those tales until, well, when it happened. I was walking under the bridge and not having any luck finding toads. So where the Snake River meets the Hoback, there's this little band right there. I was walking through the bush, As I reached the corner there, about 25 feet away, I saw something crouching in the water. Its back was towards me, and its arms were moving, and I assumed it was eating a fish or something. This was not a split-second ordeal. I had a pretty good fishing light. Today's third encounter. I hunt toads for my snakes down where the Hoback meets the Snake River. They call it the old boat ramp. Now, I've grown up hearing people tell me weird things or how they saw something in the woods, but it ended up being a stump. I never believed in those tales until this happened. I was walking around under the bridge and not having any luck finding toads. So where the Snake meets the Hoback River, there's this little band right there. I was walking through the bushes. As I reached the corner there, about 25 feet away, I saw something crouching in the water. Its back was towards me, and its arms were moving, and I assumed it was eating a fish or something. This was not a split-second ordeal. I had a pretty good flashlight, a 20-volt LED DeWalt, and I had the flashlight directly on whatever it was. While examining it, I'm thinking to myself, this is a bear. It's hunched over and has shoulders like a man, a back like a man, and a head like a man. But it had short gray hair that wasn't thick. You could see the pink skin underneath. After around 15 seconds of staring at this thing, it stopped whatever it was doing or eating and turned its head and looked at me. The face on this thing was, well, I can't explain it. It resembled a face that you see on werewolf movies. Small, squinted eyes, no snout. I could tell it was angry. This is why I knew it was not an animal or a bear or anything like that, because as soon as it noticed my flashlight, it stopped and looked around and ahead of itself to see where the light was coming from, which goes to tell me this creature had a thinking process more sophisticated than an animal's. However, once this thing looked at me and we made eye contact, I turned around and booked it back to the Jeep. I hopped in the Jeep, locked the doors, and I backed the Jeep up and turned the brights on to see if this thing was coming after me. After a couple of seconds, I didn't see anything. I said, screw this, and drove home. I went back there in the morning because I wanted to see tracks. I'm not easily convinced in the supernatural or what people see without proof. Well, it looks like I'm one of those people now. I didn't see any tracks there. However, I did see a lot of tracks on the other side of the riverbank. I'm pretty skeptical about things like this, so I need to know for sure that it was just an animal, because right now everything I thought I knew about the world has me questioning everything now. Alright guys, there was 3 terrifying encounters that made you, or may make you, question the world that we live in and think we know. I hope you guys enjoyed these encounters as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. Also, tomorrow I will be making a statement in the community board. So, have a great night. Thanks for everything.